Hello, my name is Sojin Kim from the Department of Social Welfare at Chungbu University. First of all, I would like to thank you for allowing me to present it at the 2022 International and Domestic Academic Conference hosted by the Society for Future Convergence Technology Research. The topic I will present is generational conflict with adult children experienced by elderly parents in Korea. As for the order of presentation, first, introduction, literature review, research method, result, conclusion. First, an introduction to the study. Many studies have been conducted as the intergenerational conflict have intensified. Most of the generational conflict studies conducted since the early 1970s confirmed the generation gap as quantitative data. However, the study of intergenerational conflict needs to focus on what is the generational difference that leads to the conflict. So, from the late 1990s to the present, research on intergenerational conflict or maladaptation has been in progress. There is no disagreement that these studies contribute to the resolution of intergenerational conflict. But the limitation of 1990s studies are that, first, most of the studies were conducted only from a non-elderly perspective. As a result, only theories explaining conflict from the perspective of the non-elderly were produced. In addition, generational conflict is mainly dealt with from a macro perspective. This is because society has paid much attention to the social costs caused by low birth rate and aging population. Unlike the West, for the elderly generation in Korean society who have lived with filial piety as a norm of life, the experience of intergenerational conflict can have a greater impact on their lives. In fact, when intergenerational conflicts occur within the family, the elderly not only feel socially isolated, but this can also affect their subjective well-being, life satisfaction, and depression. In this respect, it is urgent to study the difficulties experienced by the elderly generation from intergenerational conflict and their impact on their lives. Therefore, this study aims to examine the conflict between adult children and their elderly parents, especially difficult experience by elderly parents. Next, literature review. First of all, intergenerational conflict refers to state of emotional confrontation in which two or more generations perceive that they collide due to difference in values. The cause of conflict between the generation of elderly parents and the generation of adult children can be explained in three ways. First, it is a conflict between elderly parents and adult children due to disagreement in values. Different socio-cultural experience naturally cause difference in attitude, lifestyle, or values. In particular, since the value of the elderly in Korean society was influenced by traditional society, it is inevitably different from the younger generation who have learned rapidly change modern values. And this difference in inevitably lead to generational conflict. The second is conflict due to the dependence of the elderly. The dependence of the elderly means a decrease and limitation in role performance, which means limited participation in family roles and reflect the dependent status. Accordingly, the imbalance in independence due to dependence is that the conflict between elderly parents and adult children can intensify. The third is conflict due to lack of reciprocity. If the reciprocity with the adult children decreases due to the lack of resources of elderly parents, adult children become aware of the inequality of exchange cause conflict. In addition, there are studies to investigate the cause of the conflict between elderly parents and adult children through correlation. For example, there was a difference in conflict according to the marital status and health of elderly parents, and it is suggested that elderly parents' economic resource, education level, family type, and residential area influence the generational conflict. However, even if the result of this study also revealed a correlation between the variable of the cause of the conflict and the generational conflict, there will be limitation in social welfare intervention because it is not easy to change or manipulate demographic variable. Therefore, in this study, the generational conflict between elderly parents and adult children is not only concerned with the perspective of the younger generation, the children, but rather how the conflict is materialized from the perspective of the elderly parents and how it is experienced by the elderly through in-depth interviews. This is a method of selecting research participants and collecting data. First, the participants in this study were 5 elderly parents aged 65 or older, with adult children aged 20 or older. All parents were selected as the elderly who didn't live with their children. This is because there may be a difference in generational conflict depending on whether or not they live together. And the relationship with their children is very important to the elderly even when they don't live with adult children in modern society. In-depth interviews were conducted for about 4 months from September to December 2021. The number of interviews took an average of once to twice per participant, and the time took about 1 hour and 30 minutes to 2 hours per participant. Data collection was carried out by the zigzag process. The zigzag process is to first collect information, analyze the collected data through contents comparison, and then repeat the process of collecting more information and analyzing the data again. This is because efficient theoretical sampling is possible, which can help collect abundant data. This is data analysis. In this study, a qualitative research method was selected. The reason is that, as we have seen in the review of previous studies, it is necessary to look at the concrete world of experience in a situation where there is no study on how generational conflict with adult children is being experienced from the perspective of elderly parents. Next, research reliability and validity. I use the following strategies to secure the reliability and validity of qualitative research. First, a peer support group was formed. The peer support group can serve as a supervisor to monitor the reliability and validity of the study. And in this study, a peer group was formed of one social welfare professor with qualitative research experience and on-field practitioner with a master's degree in social welfare. Second, it is a cross-check. When analyzing and describing the original data, it was cross-checked with the study participant. Third, it is diversification. In order to diversify data sources, not only in-depth interviews, but also press releases related to generational conflict were included in the analysis. The following is the study result. In order to examine how the conflict between the elderly parents and the generation of adult children is experienced in the lives of the elderly, the researcher repeatedly reviewed the collected data. As a result, 6 sub-themes could be assumed, and these were grouped into 3 main categories again. The group of topics on the table are children who take parental support for granted, unacceptable difference, and a present that doesn't want to collapse, and its subcategory is shown in the following table. First of all, they are children who take parental support for granted. In the exchange theory, it is believed that the problem of conflict with the younger generation occurs because the exchange resources of the elderly are weakened. However, in this study, it can be seen that despite the fact that the actual participants provide more resources to their children than their children's generation, conflict arises. So, when discussing generational conflict based on the exchange theory at the micro level, the resources imbalances of the elder generation is not sufficient. A third explanation is required. Second, an acceptable difference. The older generation tries to accept that there are differences between generations. However, it is difficult for them to understand and accept the disrespectful behavior of their children toward them too. Third, it is a present that doesn't want to collapse. The participants were experiencing many psychological difficulties when they experienced neglect from their children. This often leads to conflict, but at the same time, it is believed that intergenerational conflict is exacerbated even when there is no trust in children. This is because negative conversation often leads to conflict if there is no trust in the child. Based on this research result, the significance of this study will be examined. First, approaching generational conflict from the perspective of elderly parents. This study can be said to have contributed to more balanced theory of intergenerational conflict, which were only dealt with from the perspective of adult children. Second, provide information necessary to reduce conflict with parents. This study can be said to have contributed to the understanding of the generation of adult children by understanding how conflict with the adult children are experienced from the perspective of the elderly. Third, provision of basic data for generation conflict program development. This study can be helpful in intervening in families suffering from conflict between the generation of elderly parents and their adult children. Thank you for listening to the presentation so far. I look forward to an opportunity to have an in-depth discussion about the conflict between the generation of the elderly and adult children in Korean society. If you have any question related to the study, please send an email and I reply later. My email address is Sojin Kim, SOJINKIM @jongbu.kr. Thank you very much.